coming up on More Than Before.
I walked out of my house that day with peace for the first time in my life ever. That still makes me emotional. And I learned in that moment that forgiveness is for the person forgiving. It's not for the person who could have received it or should receive it or even has received it.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so blessed to have my guest on with me today. He's an incredible coach. He is an engaging transformational leader. He has had a huge instrumental role in my growth and development as a coach. Currently, he is the Vice President of Global Programs with Maxwell Leadership Foundation and Equip Leadership. He has a huge heart, and you're going to hear the beat of the rhythm of that heart today, and it's going to sound like this. You matter. You matter. John Griffin, my good friend, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm great, Nathan. I love that you said you matter. So thank you. Glad to be here, man. Honored.
Well, I feel like that has been a huge role in your life of coming to that place of understanding. And we're going to get to that, I think, in your story. I have no doubt about that. But I wanted to give everyone a little bit of context of how we first met, because, you know, you have gone up the leadership ranks for a while now. It's been such a privilege for me to watch you grow, which kind of sounds really funny because you've watched me from the beginning of my journey to get to where I am today. So it's interesting, though, from the flip side, it's been really cool to see you as you've grown in your leadership and your capacity to serve others. You know, when I was first getting certified back in 2013, you were actually the one that had the daunting task of being my table mentor, which is probably one of the hardest leadership challenges of your life. But
No.
what is so great about that is I truly have gotten to know you. I've gotten to see your heart, and I've gotten to see you lead at an exponential level. I'm curious, have you always had this desire to serve others, or was this something that was cultivated in you at an early age or at another part of your life?
That's a great question. I don't know that's, I've always wanted to be a leader. I do know that. I mean, in elementary school, we'd play on the playground, and I always wanted to be the, most awesome superhero, when we play make-believe games and stupid stuff like that. But and so I know I had a desire, but did people give me that kind of influence? No, but the desire was always there. And I've had ups and downs, with that at times. But I think I've always wanted to do that. Mainly, I've always wanted to do something bigger than me.
I love that. So you grew up in Mississippi, right? Where in Mississippi did you grow up?
Right above Gulfport, Mississippi. So about 30 miles north of the coast there. A little place called Wiggins, or that's the big metropolitan area. The little smaller dot is Perkinston. And we have one stop sign, and I live 5 miles from that stop sign.
And I think they probably have 5 now, right?
Maybe. Yes.
Early on in your life, what were the family dynamics? What was life like for you growing up as a child? And who was John Griffin early on?
Oh my goodness. John Griffin, refer to myself in third person. I was a kid I was told so much that, children were meant to be seen, not heard. Anytime we were in social settings, so even though I'm a very, for the most part, outgoing, I tended to try to blend in and not stand out anywhere when we were in public, mainly because I get in trouble. I avoided a lot my mom. I grew up in what I thought was a normal household until I spent time with my friends, and I noticed that their moms didn't yell at them or beat them, and so it started making me put two and two together that I wasn't in a regular household. My dad was never there because he worked. He was a great dad, but he was trying to provide for our family. We didn't have a lot of money. So he was never there. And so my days were mainly spent avoiding kind of limelight, but also avoiding my mom because she loved to inflict physical harm all the time.
So what was school for you then? Was like in school, were you the student? Were you jock? What was your role that you saw when you were in school growing up?
I was a dreamer, really.
Mm.
I was dreaming of a better place. School was an escape for me. I tended to hang out with people who tended to like to cut up, and I had a string of kind of being a bully. I wasn't a jock. I was overweight as a kid. I was the one that for a fat boy I could move kind of fast, and so I many times at first I was kind of a secret weapon, but yet the last person, near the end, chosen for teams in elementary school. But I still held my own. I think maybe because of the stuff going on at home, I was a fighter. I was fighting for a place. I was fighting to survive. I was not understood. So I had teachers who, would tell me I was a bad kid because, we'd come back from summer break and they'd say, "Oh, what'd you do this summer?" Or "What'd you do, for Mother's Day?" And I'd say, "Well, I didn't do anything for Mother's Day. I didn't like it." And they never asked why. They just said, "My word, you're a bad kid." And so I started believing it, but as God would have it, I wasn't a Christian, but still think God looked out for me and put people in my life that were genuine friends that loved me where I was at in spite of how I was. And so school is an escape, a place to dream of a better future.
I love that you say that you had teachers that didn't believe in you, but then you also had some other teachers in your life who had tremendous influence on you. When you were in 10th grade, your chemistry teacher spoke into your life. Miss Holmes spoke in your life. Would you tell us their influence on you and how that has kind of shaped you and how that maybe even carries over as to who you are today?
Oh my goodness. I didn't, you did do your homework. That's good, Nathan. Mrs. Holmes was in elementary school. I had a friend named David, and his mother was who I called Mrs. Holmes. And Mrs. Holmes actually told me later, when I was an adult, that she came by and would pick me up after school because she suspected from the scars she saw on my legs and on my back that things were not right in my home. And so she actually would, as much as she could, she would take me, pick me up many times after school, made arrangements with my mom, and she did it under the guise of helping me learn tennis. And so I wasn't a jock, as you had said earlier, but I did become good in tennis because Mrs. Holmes spent a lot of time helping teach me tennis and put me around people who played all the time. So tennis became an escape, band became an escape. But during that time, I also grew, as I got into 10th grade, and you mentioned my chemistry teacher, Mrs. Kane, she, and I had the pleasure of getting to see her just this January. I went back to see her and three teachers who spoke so much life to me, and was able to tell them thank you in person and what that meant to me. And because Mrs. Kane, wow, she specifically said, "John, I don't know everything that's going on with you, but I do know you're better than what you're acting like now." And I didn't change when she said that, but it stuck with me. Later, she took a group of us out to a lake our senior year and set us around in a circle and spoke life into every one of us. So I wasn't the only one. But, it's words from her that I would hold on for years and still remember to this day exactly what she told me, And that service, she said, "John, you're really good at a lot of things, but I really believe you can be great at something." She was the epitome, though, of those two words. She always let me know that I mattered. And so she always spoke life. She was just such a fun teacher to be around. And that's why I do a talk called Be Like Mike anytime when I talk about teachers, because her name is Mike Kane. And so I think the world of her and Mrs. Shaw and Mrs. Webb from school.
Man, it's so amazing just the effect that someone can have on you. And I love the fact that you've been able to go back and speak that appreciation to your mentors, to people who have made significant difference in your life. It's funny because even for myself, I've had students from my martial arts days, 20 years ago, where I'll have students come up to me and thank me for certain things that I said or certain things that I did. And at the time, didn't really think about it. Going back to that interaction that you had with them this past January, was there like a moment of like an aha moment of, wow, this is really full circle of how amazing this is to go back and to thank someone that went out of their way to see you where you were and to encourage you and maybe even pull you out of that?
It's mainly that the effect of that, because all three of those ladies, had a wonderful impact. Mrs. Shaw, I'll mention this, not as big an impact in school as she was since then. She was a teacher that continued to encourage me from a distance over the years. And so I'm indebted to her. She never stopped being that teacher. And she does that with all of her students. But what really stood out to me, Nathan, and in January was we have that opportunity to have impact on people that may never have that opportunity to come back and thank us. But if we'll just add value to them and see them and speak life into them, it will stick. And if we'll do it because it's the right thing to do and we believe it and it's part of our heartbeat, we don't have to worry about getting the thank you. But I had that ability to do that. And so I wanted to. It was important to me. It doesn't mean it's going to be important to everybody else.
Yeah. So you graduate from high school, and where do you go from there?
I immediately moved out of the house. I couldn't take the pressure. When I was a kind of this pressure cooker waiting to bust, and I did not know how to process all of the bitterness inside. So I moved 5 miles from the house onto the campus of a community college. I worked in the dorms during the summer to help pay. I had a scholarship there with band and academic, but that was all, thankfully that was provided. But I went there, and that was kind of the beginning of me trying to process stuff, but I never told anybody. Nobody ever knew my childhood. I graduated from the community college, went on to Mississippi State, and a man named Ken saw me. I wasn't a believer. I just went to this thing called Baptist Student Union at the time because there were a lot of cute girls going there. And I just thought that was my odds would go up, of maybe getting a date if I went there. And so, but I was going there, but Ken actually, he was the director, and he sat me down one day and he said, "John, I'm just curious. Tell me your story." Nobody's ever said that to me at all. And for whatever reason, in that moment, I unloaded everything. I said, "All right, here's my story." And so I told him, starting when I was 5 years old, of this first memory of pain. Mom slamming my arm in the trunk of the car trying to break it because she was just having a bad day. And me running in the hospital, hiding in the storage room there because I was afraid the doctors were going to make it even worse. I remember that vividly as if it were yesterday. But then I fast forwarded all through that, and he had godly wisdom and just said, John, here's a couple of things I know. One is God doesn't make junk. You are worthy. You have worth. But he said, but you need him. I want to help you with that. That was the first thing. The second thing, though, is he said, you need to get your mom help. And he was apparently experienced with bipolar disorder and manic depression. And he said, your mom's is riding that train of both very easily. And, later we discovered he was right. We got her to go to the doctor, and she got diagnosed. But in that process, Ken helped me, one, begin a relationship with my Creator. I gave my life to the Lord during that time period. He began to help me process all of that. I had another gentleman who was helping me to learn what does it mean to be a follower of the Lord. But then Ken said, you need to go forgive your mom. And I was like, dude, you need to jump off a bridge, because that's not going to happen. I had too many scars. And that's when he reminded me of the scars of Christ that he had. And he forgave me. I said, that sounds great, but I'm still not doing it. And it took we processed that for about 9 months before I got the courage to go home and forgive my mom. And in that process, Nathan, I read out 5 pages back in front of everything she did to me. I had her and Dad sitting in the bed, in the living room. And when I finished, I said, today we start new. I forgive you. I love you. I'm done thinking about this stuff. It's finished. And I crumpled it up and threw it in their wood burning stove. And I expected, the heavens to open up, lights to shine in, angels singing. But I got the opposite. My mom glared at me, cussed me out, kicked me out of the house, and we didn't talk for 6 months. But here's the reason why I share that and what I learned in that, because I walked out of my house that day with peace for the first time in my life, ever. That still makes me emotional because of that peace. And I learned in that moment that forgiveness is for the person forgiving. It's not for the person who could have received it or should receive it or even has received it. It's for the person letting go and not letting that weigh them down anymore. And that's what happened that day. I forgave her and I meant it. And I walked out with peace. The other thing, though, that I learned that day is we have to choose to do the right thing and have tough conversations, but we have no control over how people will respond. But we still need to do the right thing. And the right thing that day was for me to forgive my mom. And I did, but I had no control over how she would respond. And so that's really one of the things that's served me to this day. I like to talk to our team that we're going to share truth and love. And our responsibility is to make sure we're sharing truth and love. And if we're doing that, then we don't have control over how people will take that, but we have every bit of control over sharing truth in love.
This idea of forgiveness is really powerful because there are so many people that walk around with a lot of weight in their life. And I'm curious, how did the carrying of that unforgiveness show itself in your life up until that point? Because I think sometimes we focus a lot on, I forgive them. And while I had peace, and you walked out and you had peace for the first time that day, sometimes I feel like we don't give enough precedence of what it is that we carry when we are unforgiving of others. I mean, you've lightly talked about it. I say this in a strange way, but you've talked about your mother lightly in the fact of just how difficult it was. And I'm curious, how did that show itself in other aspects of your life, that relationship with your mom and that unforgiveness? How did that keep you from truly enjoying and being the person that God created you to be?
That's a great question. Prior to that, well, and I wish I could say it was all fixed that day. It wasn't. The peace entered, but I still carried unworthiness after that. And if we have time, I'll tell you that. But I would react to everything. I wouldn't respond. I didn't have control over my emotions at all up until that point because I was always walking on pins and needles. My mom was so unpredictable that I never knew, was I going to be talking to the mom who in a brief instance would be nice, or was I going to talk to the woman that was just going to slap me out of nowhere or grab the first thing she could find and just beat and start making up all kinds of stuff. And disclaimer, by the way, there were spankings as a child that I legitimately deserved. And so I'm not saying I was a perfect child and I just got beat every day. I mean, there were legitimate things. I was a kid, but not every day. And even the times where I deserved to be spanked, it was a beating. It was not. There was blood. There were welts. And so in those times, I had a lot of bitterness inside that I didn't know what to do with. And so, probably one of if you know me, I love dogs. I mean, my dog, that's why I didn't kick her out of here. And she's going to whimper here in a minute because she's anxious to go out. She is, I love animals. And for anybody to ever think that I would be mean to an animal, it would be probably the furthest thing from your imagination. But one of the things I never talk about, but here, I'll just put it out to the world here. I remember I used to take it out on our little Chihuahua, Peppy. He was my little Chihuahua, but he would get kind of irritated and stuff. And when he would do it, I would just get mad and I would throw him in the couch. Now, I didn't throw him in a way that would break anything, but it was still not good. I was throwing him into the couch. Of course, he'd hit pillows and stuff, but that was just me, for a kid trying to process that. And I'm so grateful that nothing ever happened to Peppy because I mean, that would have been, a little bit scarring on me as a kid, but I carried around a lot of bitterness that I didn't know what to do with. And so I would react in just crazy ways.
So you kind of have this moment where you've laid it all out. You forgive your mom. You walk out. Things haven't changed necessarily, but things have changed. Your heart has changed in terms of wanting to move forward. What were you doing at that time in terms of work, and how did you come to find where you are right now, your home within Maxwell Leadership? Because I find it really interesting. We've heard the phrase that the fish rots from the head down. And I think you can look at any situation within leadership and you can say the reason why these people are acting this way is because this is where the leader is. The leader is pushing them down. The leader is not treating them with respect. They don't see value in their people. And in your life, you're working, you're trying to figure out who you are in life, showing up. And I'm curious, how do you get to that point where now you are serving with one of the foremost prominent leadership experts in the world, serving on his team, and you are experiencing leadership for the first time? How did you get to that point?
Well, let's see. We need about 3 hours for that one, Nathan. I'll give you a quick digest of that. I went on to graduate college and went to work at a Fortune 100 company, and as I worked there, I got promoted into leadership position fairly quickly, to where I began to manage my peers, and my peers quickly hated me. And it wasn't because they were jealous that I got the role. It was because I was a horrible leader. I didn't know how to manage people. And it was so bad, I would look out in the parking lot both ways, thinking somebody's going to run me over. And thankfully, I was fortunate and blessed to have a do-over. We took myself out of leadership, and I began that's when I began to try to study leadership. I went to, 7 Habits, Stephen Covey's, and then got a book, of John's, and began to digest anything I could get my hands on and try to apply it. And it was a while, like 2.5 years before I took another opportunity to do that, because I wasn't mature enough and had too big of an ego, thinking all of a sudden with a manager title, I knew everything. And instead of asking people's input, I wasn't asking anything. I was telling everybody everything. Oh, I don't need that. I don't care what your opinion is. You go do it. Go do this. I know better because I'm the manager. And so as I grew through the years, we started our own business, and I learned a lot about really ownership in our business. And that's a key phrase there. But in the midst of all of that, Nathan, is where in my leadership journey, I was also able to finally discover value and worth in me. And that's where those whole 2 words that you quoted me is always saying, you matter, on a retreat. And I won't go into all the details on that, but it was a very personal, private moment on a mountaintop where we were told to take a vow of silence and just go and ask God, what does he think of us? And for 30 minutes, I did that and never heard anything, never got impressed upon anything. And I started getting mad, and I noticed all of this unworthiness was coming up, and, feeling like a lemming and all this stuff. And in a powerful moment when I was getting up to go back and just writing the whole experience off, I felt like I was shoved back down and sitting in that private place. And I felt really impressed in that moment, those 2 words. And I began journaling, and I was sobbing. And for about 5 or 6 minutes, I was just writing everything that I could write. And it was really just, some people, get weirded out if you say it's a message from God and all that. All I know is I wrote what I felt in that moment. And I felt like that it was my Lord telling me that not only that I had value and worth, but everybody that lives and breathes has the same. And he wanted me to discover it about myself so that I could let everybody else know that he feels the same way about them. And so that entered into my whole leadership, that as we continued to run our company, my dad died in 2009, and that's what caused me to question really what fed my soul and what fed my bank account. And I realized that our business that we created, and I'd already left corporate world by then, it fed our bank account so well, but it didn't feed my soul. And I wanted to find what I could do with endless energy the rest of my life. And that's what ultimately led me to become a coach and a speaker and a trainer. And so I did that through joining John Maxwell's program in 2011. And as I grew in that, I was just blessed to be given some opportunities within the team to just serve. And as I served, it got noticed, and they gave me opportunities to do even coaching on their behalf while I still had my own coaching company. And that led to developing some content with our now CEO, and develop into a relationship where he asked me to join the executive team. And then as a part of that, opportunities were opening up to where the question came back again: what feeds your soul and what feeds your bank account? And this opportunity in the foundation came open that they said, John, this really seems like something that would feed your soul. And Mark and I talked about it, and he released me for that. Said it wholeheartedly he believed that's where I needed to serve. And I serve a leader within the foundation, 2 leaders actually, George and Greg. But this is where I've never worked harder in my life, but I don't feel like I work, because it feeds my soul to see people change through values-based leadership. Whether it's students, whether it's adults in communities and countries around the world, or whether it's people that are getting to know and meet my creator for the first time through one of those programs. It's an amazing, and it's very addictive to watch the change in people's attitudes and their minds. You said a fish rots from the head down. Yes, it all starts here. If we can't understand our value and our worth, and it impacts our attitude, our heart is going to have a hard time following that. Mm. And it's got to take that 18-inch trip from the head to the heart to save the rest of the body. And that's what I believe that I get to be a part of. As I travel around the world, I get to watch people have an intellectual conversation and begin to discover their value and their worth, and not only their value, but their values, and begin to live those out day to day. And as they live it out and test it out, they get more confident. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle to where they build themselves up and understand that value and worth. And all of a sudden they switch from success in learning all of that to significance, to be able to share that with other people. And it's addictive, dude. I don't get tired of this. And I hope I do this until I slip on the banana peel in my grave, because that's the thing that happened in 2009, watching my dad take his very last breath, when the reality is he died in his spirit years before, because he wasn't doing soul feeding activities. Mm-hmm. He was doing stuff to just make ends meet. And I committed to find out what that is for me. And I credit my dad with that. And so fast forward all these years later, unless something radically changes in my life, I cannot imagine of doing anything that will feed my soul more than what I get to do.
You have had amazing experiences, and it's so crazy to see this journey. And I know that you guys listening in right now, like, you guys are so lucky to be a fly on the wall listening to everything. Like, if go back and listen to the last 10 minutes of everything that John just said, because there is pure gold. And I know I say this often, but there is some pure gold within what he just said that is going to truly transform and change your life. If you take some of the things that he said and you implement those, you put those in your life, finding your values, living those values, finding that you are valuable. My goodness, there is so much gold in here. John, it's so funny. You going from a position, an intern, I think you were at NASA, and telling people what to do that they didn't know what they were talking about, to a place where you are going and truly making a massive impact. In fact, recently you had, I think, probably one of the greatest achievements in your life, which was launching a transformation in Papua New Guinea. They are seeing some absolutely crazy transformation there. Would you mind talking a little bit about what you have seen changing in Papua New Guinea? Because I think it's fitting that you're spearheading this, and yet with all of your past, with everything that has gone on in your past, you're the perfect person with the heart to be there, to encourage others, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to have change. What are some of those changes that they're starting to see in Papua New Guinea?
I will tell you, I'm not there enough. The people there, I have fallen in love with. There are amazing people there who have, unfortunately, similar stories as mine. And you know, at risk of maybe offending some people I shouldn't over there, you know, it's a government that is very corrupt and very self-serving. There's some good people in government there, but they're coming out of a stage, or they're experiencing this they're restless because they're learning and living good values, and they're not seeing it from their leaders of the country. And so there's this unrest right now, and will continue to grow as more and more people go and experience their own personal value and worth and begin to learn and live good values. But here's the most promising thing that really excites me, Nathan, is right now, because of what started, and I'm not spearheading this. There's a incredible gentleman, head of the PNG Tribal Foundation over there, named Gary Buston, who is really spearheading that there. Talk about passion for his people. And so through his spearheading it and him being there all the time, we're now working with the Department of Education. And imagine this, that in about 3 years, every student in every grade in that country will begin their day, the first 15 minutes of every day, no matter what grade you're in, you'll be talking about a leadership value for about 15 minutes, just a short, what we call a leadership moment. And they'll just throw out it, but it will be congruent with the value they're going to study that week. So if first graders are studying about integrity and, eighth graders are studying hope, let's pick on eighth graders. We're talking about hope. They're going to start the first 15 minutes talking about hope. Many of them are just hoping they get a date. That's what I was when I was in eighth grade, but different hope. But their hope, as they talk about that, in that 15 minutes plants the seed, but they're doing that same hope 15 minutes every day that week. Then one period that week, the teacher will do a teacher-led discussion around hope. And they'll talk about it for one whole class period. And then during one of their extracurricular class periods that's dedicated now to this, the students will have student-led discussion. No teacher, no adults allowed to say anything. The students around a table, 6 to 8 of them, talking about what they feel like that means to them. And we already see stuff like this in Rwanda, incredible transformation stories out of those students there. Papua New Guinea, though, is taking it to a whole other level to get every student, 1st through 12. Imagine in 12 years, as students begin graduating, that have had 12 years of talking about values and where there's congruence in what they say and how they live it out. And every year cranking out graduates that have learned and lived good values. What that's going to do for a country over there that has gender-based violence that's ridiculous, that has sorcery, accusation-related violence, of these crazy con artists traveling around the country, convincing people that they have witches in their village, and people eat it up and go torture these people. And it's horrible because it's typically 14-year-old girls or older widows, the most vulnerable. It's because people have lost their values. And when they find their values and their value, they will see it in others. And that kind of ridiculousness will begin to diminish and hopefully be eradicated.
So many different things I want to ask you right now. You truly have had doors open for you, some pretty incredible doors that have opened to you. But what I find really fascinating about you and what I love about you is that you're not just someone who allows doors to open for you. You regularly open doors for other people. In fact, I recall I was at an event with you a number of years ago, and we were walking out of kind of the main room, and you said, "Hey, what are you doing for dinner?" And I said, I don't really know. Nothing. And you said, "Well, why don't you come with me? And the only stipulation is you have to invite someone that you know. Invite someone that I don't know and bring them along to dinner." And so I did. And that dinner was probably one of the best dinners I've ever had at those events that we were at, because John fills tables with other leaders who care about other people, who see value in other people, who want to add value to those people. And you are just a natural, it seems like now, at opening doors for other people. And so I'm curious, what are some of the greatest doors that were opened for you that you had no ability to open for yourself? And why has it been so important for you to continue on that legacy to open the doors for others?
Probably the most impactful door right now in recent history was while I was a part of this Maxwell team, I didn't really know Mark. We were not friends, and I admired his leadership and all that, but I didn't know him, and the only way that door opened was because the person who was over the team at the time, named Paul, Paul told Mark that we should develop some content together. And that's how Mark and I began to develop a friendship and develop this growth program together, personal growth program. And that led to opening a slew of doors that Mark and John would open that I could never have opened, to where, today, I get to leave in a couple of weeks, and I still, the next 3 months, I'm sitting here going, how do these doors open? I'm blessed, and I got to tell you, one of the reasons I truly believe, and this is going to almost sound self-serving, but it's because one of my leaders and I had a great conversation. His name's George, and George was saying, John, because I would talk about all of our programs and feeling the burden of ownership, and he said, John, you don't own these. You don't own any of these. He goes, I don't own any of these. We have stewardship of these. And it completely changed my whole view of everything I do. My team members are not my team members. I have stewardship. I have responsibility to them and for them. But there's so many things I look at differently now. Even my home, I don't own it. I have stewardship, my bank account, everything. But now when I approach this, understanding stewardship versus ownership, and in my opinion, there's a bigger burden with that, and a much more seriousness to that in the midst of it has driven me to my knees. That no man could open the doors that I'm going through in the next few months, to meeting with people that very few people get to talk to, whether it's in Asia, where I'm about to leave next Sunday, or in June, meeting with the first lady of a country to talk about, she wants me to talk to her about our student program and wants to put it in all the schools in her country. And it was by her invitation. I didn't go knock on that door, because I tell our team, we go where we're wanted, not where we want to go. I want to go everywhere, but I'm not going to go everywhere. I'm going to go where I'm wanted. And out of nowhere, this first lady of this country, she didn't know me. She just wanted this and sees the value because it's going on in the country right next to hers. And they're hearing the buzz from that. To the people that I'll meet in another country on that same continent over there, to then in July to be all across Europe, and then back in August going back over to Asia. I pinch myself, and I swear I'm not saying this to brag, because I have nothing to do with this except trying my best to steward what I've been given an opportunity to have some responsibility to and for.
It's definitely apparent that you have learned to steward a lot of the things in your life, to take care of them, and kind of releasing those things, knowing that you don't have ownership of those things. I am curious, it's not very often I get to talk to someone who's been married for almost 30 years. You're so close to that 30-year mark. And your beautiful bride, Antoinette, is just absolutely phenomenal. She is the wonderful introvert. She has a great YouTube page. Make sure you guys go check out Antoinette Griffin. But one of the things I absolutely love to ask is, what do you wish that you know now about marriage, about walking in your marriage with your bride? What do you wish you knew back when you first started that you know now? What is that, and how would that have changed your guys' relationship?
I wish I asked more questions early on, to understand how she really felt about things, um, rather than me assume. And, and all the other stuff that goes with the typical being a dumb dude in a marriage, of trying to fix everything, that when she just needs an ear to somebody to listen and things like that. But to ask questions to try to better understand her, because it was, oh my goodness, almost 10 years before I really learned that lesson. And it wasn't like it was horrible till then, but it just got so much better. But I wish I would have listened to her sooner. I wish I would have helped her find her sooner. She is living what I believe is her best life right now. And she's added so much value to our marriage through questions. Every year, she comes up with a slate of questions that I've got to answer, and she always knows I'm going to make her answer them also. But she adds stuff every year, and so now I'm answering 10 questions regarding our marriage and our walk together, this journey together. And then I answer 5 things that I need from her for the next 12 months. And she answers 5 things she needs from me, and we share those. It's amazing the stuff that she comes up with, but it's because she's found herself in the process and through questions. So I think the number one thing for me was not assume and ask questions sooner. I still, one of the things she needs from me, some are deep, but I'm going to tell you the most shallow one, because I stink at this, because I get busy in the morning and I still forget. And it's been on her list for 3 years. She needs me to make the bed because she does everything else. She does so much stuff. And all she's asking me to do is just make the stupid bed before I go to work. And there are still probably 3 out of 7 days. And if she were here, she'd probably say 4 or 5. But, that I forget, and I'm just out and I'm always apologizing. But there's only 3 tasks that I really have out of that. And the other 2, I'm doing okay, just not as good as the bed, or not as bad as the bed, but I'm not perfect at it. That's shaking our rugs. That's all she asks. Would you help, do something around the house and clean our bathrooms? But I wish I would ask more questions.
I love that so much, because for anyone who has known myself and my wife for, any number of time for the past 5 years, we have a retreat that we do every single year. Willow and I, it's gotten better. The first year we didn't go anywhere. We sent off our one child at the time. We sent our daughter off to grandma and grandpa's, and we spent, I think, 2 days going through questions, asking each other questions. In fact, it wasn't a good year because we were interrogating each other. It wasn't a fun time. It was more of like, what do you want for your life? What are you doing? All right. And it's what's funny is it's come to the point now. This is our 5th. We just completed our 5th year of doing our annual planning. This is the most exciting year we have ever planned out for what it is that we desire in our life, in our marriage, as parents, for our goals, our dreams, where we're going. And I got to tell you, the reason why we do this is because of the man that you're looking at right now. He is the gentleman that taught me to do this with my wife, because so often in times we forget especially when we're married, we forget that there's someone else in the mix. We need to bring our spouse with us on the ride. And we forget, right? We've been in those moments where we start reading books and we start listening to podcasts and we do, fill in the blank. We pour into ourselves, and yet we never think to pour into our spouse. And John Griffin is the one who taught me to start doing that, to actually bring my wife along for the ride. I have absolutely loved our conversation, John. I love who you are. I love how you show up and who you show up as. And I have one more question for you here, because, truly you are a wealth of knowledge. I think we could probably spend the next 4 hours going through your story and just really dissecting and learning how to live a full life. But I really appreciate you being raw and real. Just, there aren't very many people that are as real as you are. And so I really appreciate that. So here's the question I want to ask for you.
Thank you.
Self-worth has been an integral part of what you communicate. You've said it. I said it at the very beginning. You matter. You matter. In fact, you went further into where I was going to ask this early on, which was, you matter. God doesn't make junk, and this ain't no junkyard. Why is self-worth so important? And what would you say to the person who's struggling with their self-worth right now, that they don't feel like they have worth? What would you tell that person?
The first thing I would tell them is it's a lie, and it's very deceptive, because the more that we feel like that we have little worth, we begin to see and look at the world around us. And I'll tell you what I did when I didn't feel that way. I looked around and tried to look for what was wrong with everybody else, in the hopes that somehow that would make me feel better about me. And it never worked. But what I found is you always find what you're looking for. And if you feel like you're garbage or you have no worth, then you're beginning to look for the garbage in other people's life to see, are you normal? And the reality is, yes, you're normal. 2, everybody's got garbage. And if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. But everybody's got greatness as well. And it's not about even a balancing scale of greatness versus garbage. If you live and you breathe, you have intrinsic value and worth. You were created for purpose and for greatness. And when we begin to realize, you don't have to wholeheartedly believe it, but believe it enough to begin to ask the question, what am I here for? What am I supposed to do? And begin to serve. I wish some Christian dude would have said this, but it wasn't a Christian dude. It was Gandhi, and he's a pretty good dude. But he said, you find yourself when you lose yourself in serving others. And that's what I would tell you is, all of your lack of worth or feeling of lack of worth, what I discovered in journaling and processing this during those years is I felt more worth when I was serving others. Now, it was only for the moment, because I would always come back and still feel the inadequacies, but I saw how much my soul would come alive in the midst of that. And that wasn't just, I believe that's a human condition. I don't believe that there's one human being on this planet that when they serve another human being and see the joy in their eyes from being served, that doesn't do something to you that makes you feel better about you. And so until you can discover it and figure it out about yourself, start serving. And you will begin to find yourself in the middle of that. Your soul will begin to stir. And those are the things that you begin to pay attention to. And as you discover that, don't let it go. Begin to do a little bit of deeper dive and begin to pinpoint some of that service, and you will start discovering what you were meant to do. I believe what I'm meant to do right now is what I'm doing, but it's only because I've spent years trying to serve in different areas that have led me to finally land here. And I wouldn't say that it's late. It's right on time. and I'm an old fart, but it's right on time because I can, in this season of life, I can serve my butt off, and I'm going to be the happiest man on this planet and the most fulfilled person. And guess what? That's going to make me a better husband to my wife. That's going to make me a better friend to people like Nathan. That's going to make me a better worker for the people who employ me. It's just going to make me better. It's not going to make me perfect, but it will definitely make me better. And it will make you better too. Anytime, if you feel like you have no value and worth, come sit with me. We'll dispel that lie. Come sit with somebody like Nathan. Nathan, I have watched you, bro, go through all kinds of crazy ups and downs to where I am so proud of you. I am so proud of the man that you've become for your wife and for your kids, and the value that you are adding in the marketplace, not just through this, but through your coaching, but also through this broadcasting. You belong here in this space. I suck at this space. I don't belong here, but you belong here. And the world needs you with a broader audience. So let me tell you something that he should tell you. Share, not just this one, share all of his podcasts, because I'm sure he's brought out the best in others and showing how they're more than before.
I absolutely love that. And I appreciate you saying that. You know, this episode has to be one of the top 5 episodes we've ever had thus far on the podcast. There's so much gold in here. And I want to encourage you listening right now. I want you to do exactly what John just said. Smash the like button, subscribe to this, share this with someone, because I tell you this, when someone sees you, when someone believes in you, then you're able to start seeing your potential and to live up to what other people see you can be. And we need more John Griffins in the world. We need more Nathan Cooks in the world. We need more Mark Coles in the world. We need a lot more people in this world that see people where they are and they believe that they are better, and to help them bridge the gap of where they are and at where they can be. Thank you so much for listening in. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this episode with a friend. And until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.